everybody. I think it's just wonderful that so many of you come out on this night. It's a cold winter night. It must be because I think you feel that, as I do, that this is a very special time and that we really need to talk with one another and think about what time it is so that we just don't react, and then we act with the kind of sort of what's appropriate and what's necessary to the challenges and the opportunities that we have. The article that we're discussing tonight comes from this book. It's called Expanding the Boundaries of Transformative Learning. But it's a book written by a bunch of Canadians who are connected with the Ontario Society of Educators at the University of Toronto. And they are not only educators, but they are artists, they are photographers, they are dancers, and Melanie himself is a carpenter. And what's very interesting about them that I discovered as I read the book is that because they're Canadians, they're much more conscious of the indigenous peoples that are part of Canada than we are here. And so they have a sense of how destructive industrial society has been. And they realize that we are at a very extraordinary turning point, not only in the history of the human race, but in the history of the planet. That we have the power within us to extinguish all life on this earth if we continue in the way that we've been going. And at the same time, we have the power within us to turn the road, make a choice to go a different way and be given to live very, very differently. And I think that's the issue that we're faced with at this particular time in a way that I don't think, the only thing parallel I can think of is, say, when the meteor hit the Earth 65 million years ago and exterminated the dinosaurs. But that was an external cause that exterminated the Earth. And we're faced now with an internal cause. It's something, a way that we've lived, a life that we've created that's just so destructive, and that we have the choice to change. I can't remember any other time in the history of movements that's been the case. It was not the case in the 60s. It was not the case in the 30s. It was not the case in the 19th century. It was not the case at the time of the French Revolution. If we go back and think about how, of other periods, this is the only time that's a turning point in the history of the earth, where we have this power either to choose life or to choose extinction. And that's why I think we're here tonight. I think that's why we came out on this cold winter night. It's not just Obama's election, though that has introduced another quality, but it is a particular turning point that we are at that requires that we do a lot of thinking, a lot of talking with each other, and arrive at some sort of understanding of what time it is on the clock of the world.
I don't know that people are going, young people love their cell phone and they are so good at it. And I have a niece who is 18 and I can see she's already has all the, the newest gear, and they were raised by looking at TV and playing those little video games. And they have a very different mindset than I have, and I don't think they're going to go back to this less technological path, but I think what to me is more, how can we make it more collective? Because they feel isolated and we all feel isolated. And can we become more collective in a culture that tries to individualize us? What's going to be our common thread is in becoming more collective and creating those communities.
plants closed in Flint, a philosophy professor in Ann Arbor, Fritjof Bergman, began looking at new work. What is the new definition of work that is no longer tied to a corporation giving you economic security for your life, but there is some part of your relation with the global market, and there is some part of your survival relation through mutual aid and the neighborhood grocery and all that, and there is some part that is from the inner call that you have.
What's needed in that is precisely to identify my needs, and to be clear about it. I mean, I came across the Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication book, and then am currently in a practice group that meets in Livonia, but I carry this little list around of what my needs are because I don't know them, and I'm thinking, if we're going to, as a society, kind of go to real human needs, and because he says what we need to identify as the needs that we all have in common. Every human being has these needs. So then I can legitimately say what I need, and you may or may not respond, but it's human. I'm not making any demand that I know you don't also have. It'll look different, but it's something we share.
Serving the community and economy is developing whole human beings. Conversely, whole human beings need a social context whereby their energies can help regenerate their communities. And I guess sort of in the context of how does this happen, and people in isolation doing it, I think when he tackles the idea of developing whole human beings to education, community, and economy, that's sort of a radical thought in the context of where we are. So when we ask about how this happens, one of the sort of mediums where it happens is through education, and that becomes a timely process, but it also involves rethinking the interactions with people in that social context.
The opportunity for synthesis requires trust, because you have to trust where that information is coming from. You have to trust the context, the place. But synthesis presents an opportunity for replicability. And trust is replicable. And the scale of trust is replicable. And because the scale is so inclusive, then we can come down to what we want, and what we want creates trust, and trust creates the possibilities of these things that have never been before.